Hey everyone, Mitch coming up with the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, today's episode comes to you courtesy of Caleb, who's been supporting this channel as a general tier patron. And I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Caleb. So again, Caleb, thank you so much. And for the personalized deck tech, Caleb chose a deck built around Zevlor, focusing on group hug, in quotes, anti-hug spellslinger theme with Zevlor the Exile, where we copy spells to gain loads of advantage. So, Zevlor Elturel Exile is a 4/2 Tiefling Warrior with haste that costs 1 blue, black, red. Pay 2 tap when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a single opponent or any single permanent an opponent controls this turn. For each other opponent, choose that player or a permanent they control. Copy that spell, and then copy the copy targets the chosen player or permanent. Basically, a long, drawn-out way of saying, hey, if you target one thing, you get to target 3 things, essentially, or, 3 opponents, essentially. So basically, if you are targeting one of your opponent's things or their face, you get to do it to the other opponents as well. So yeah, this commander essentially can triple up on your spells, basically, again, getting you 2 extra copies, assuming obviously your opponents are still around. So yeah, there are some really powerful and really brutal things that we can do and ways to get a lot of advantage out of this effect, including potentially getting it more than once in a turn. Now, with my deck tax, well, every single card in the deck is going to be less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck. And also keep in mind that on these deck tacks, I'm going to be taking through different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. And of course, if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And now with all that said, well, let's jump into the cards. So, first up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 tap and sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. What's not to love about that? When it comes to ramp, of course, we've got a lot of great mana rocks to help us out as well. Arcane Signet can tap for either of our colors, and so can Felwar Stone most of the time. Then we've got some talismans, the talismans that are more budget-friendly with Talisman of Dominance and Talisman of Creativity. Each can tap for a colorless or one of our colors, but they're going to deal 1 damage to us. Moving on, we are going to be running all of our signets. That's right, the signets keep getting reprinted, so thank goodness they are finally more budget-friendly. Regardless, each of them, basically, you pay 1 into and tap them for their guild's colors. Next up, we've got the diamonds as well, with Charcoal Diamond, Sky Diamond, and Fire Diamond, each into the battlefield tapped and tap for 1 of our 3 colors. Then we've got some mana rocks that tap for even more with Worn Power Stone and Firemind Vessel. The Power Stone enters the battlefield tapped and taps for 2. Firemind Vessel enters the battlefield tapped and also taps for 2, but 2 mana of different colors. Finally, we do have a ritual effect that can be incredible with this commander with Rousing Refrain. We can suspend it for 3 for 1 in a red. And it says, add red for each card in target opponent's hand. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phase end. And then you get to resuspend it for 3, essentially. So yeah, again, this is targeting an opponent. So with your commander, you can triple it up for a massive amount of mana. So yeah, this commander can provide you an absurd amount of mana. And although we've already talked about ramp, we've got another way to help cast even more spells in our turns. So now let's move on and talk about some ways to reduce the cost of our instant sorceries, because again, our commander's ability does cost a little bit extra, only 2 mana extra, which is a lot of value for that 2 mana, but let's help our commander out, by reducing the cost of some other things, like, Nightscape Familiar. Blue and red spells are going to cost 1 less for us to cast. Goblin Electromancer is going to reduce the cost for instant sorceries, and so does Wizards of Thay, but it also has Myriad, so, well, when it attacks, we get copies of it. And, yeah, during combat, we're going to be able to cast spells for even less. On top of that, we can actually cast sorcery spells at flash speed. That's lovely, too. Next up, we've got some enchantments that can help us out with Font of Magic and Jace's Sanctum. Font of Magic says instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less cast for each time you cast a commander for the command zone this game. So this can really help reduce the cost of our instant sorceries as the game goes on. Jace's Sanctum is going to help reduce the cost by 1. And on top of that, whenever it casts an instant sorcery spell, we scry 1. So it's some fantastic card selection for us there. Speaking of which, Zephi Thunder Conductor, well, can basically do the exact same thing. Whenever you cast instant sorcery spell, scry 1. Great. Also, if that spell's mana value is 5 or greater, we're getting a 4/4. And if it's 10 or greater, well, we're going to be dealing 10 damage to an opponent chosen at random. So some extra value for us there. Now, speaking of extra value, though, next up, let's talk about some ways to get some extra activations out of our commander with things like Clever Conjurer, Kelpie Guide, and Vizier of Tumbling Sands, each of which basically have tap, untap, target permanent. So actually these can help us with, ramping if we need extra mana, but if we want to use our commander's activation once again, just tap, untap our commander, pay the 2, tap again, and have fun. And speaking of fun, Nimbleclaw Adept, tap, untap 2 target permanents. Yeah, this can really help us out throughout the game. Again, basically, even if we don't have our commander out, this can just be, hey, get 2 lands untapped, tap them again. And yeah, again, with our commander, we get our commander's activation again, as well as something else if we have, things to tap. Moving forward, Retreat to Coral Helm, a great, repeatable way to untap our commander. Land enters the battlefield, tap, run, tap target creature, or scry 1 if we need it. But yeah, basically, hey, untap your commander again just for playing a land, or, cracking Evolving Wilds. Next up, Chalk and Retriever. This one can get pretty out of control. Whenever you cast a spell during your turn, untap target creatures. So, yeah, we can just keep untapping our commander every single time we cast a spell on our turn, and that's going to be quite often. In the opposite way, though, we've got Stinging Lionfish. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, you may tap or untap target non-land permanent. So again, now we're benefited, for casting more instants on our opponent's turns and getting value out of it there. So yeah, there are a lot of ways to take advantage of our commander's ability. Speaking of which, now let's move on and talk about some awesome ways to generate some card advantage with some cards like Portent, Peek, and Thought Scour. Now, these are all very low to the ground cards that, well, in most decks out there wouldn't really provide a ton of advantage, but with this commander, well, let's just read Portent. Look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, then put them back in any order. You may have the player shuffle their library. Here's the thing. Again, this does target an opponent if we target one of our opponents, so we can make sure that we target our other opponents with it as well with our commander. And of course, on top of that, draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Basically, this can be, with our commander in combination, 3 mana, draw 3 delayed, and also, maybe mess with the top of our opponent's decks. Speaking of messing with our opponents, Peek, look at target player's hand, draw a card. Again, pay 2 extra with our commander. Hey, draw 3 cards, look at your opponent's hands. Yeah, there's some politicking you can utilize in that. Be like, oh, this player has a great hand. I will tell everyone what this player has. Maybe let's deal with them. Thought Scour, target player mills 2. Doesn't really matter all that much, but it does target, and then also draw a card. So again, basically, yeah, 3 mana, draw 3. That's a lot of value. Speaking of which, Leadership Vacuum. Target player returns each commander they control from the battlefield to the command zone, draw a card. Again, pay additional 2, draw 3 for 5 mana, bounce 3 commanders, or, maybe even more if they're partner commanders. Regardless, yeah, a lot of value there. Pilfered Plans. Target player mills 2. Yeah, who cares? But it does target, draw 2 cards. So yeah, basically 5 mana, draw 6. Fortune's Favor, somewhat similar in the amount of card advantage it can potentially give us. Target opponents look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them in face down and face up pile. One goes in your hand, the other goes in your graveyard. Kind of like a Fact or Fiction in a way. And yeah, now for just 2 extra mana, we get to do this 3 times, 1 for each opponent. So an absurd amount of card advantage with that. Next up, speaking of card advantage, well, we can actually have our opponents help us out with that as well with their card, Siphon Insight. Get a look at the top 2 cards of opponent's library. One of them gets exiled face down, and then we can, look at and play it, spend maybe any color, and we can also flash this back. So, yeah, again, basically, just some additional ways to get some extra value out of our opponents. We can even take them out with their own cards. Talent the Telepath. Basically, look at the top 7. You get an instant or sorcerer from among them, cast it for free off an opponent's library. And Spell Mastery, you get to do it with 2 of those cards. So, yeah, if you have Spell Mastery, which we are going to because of the amount of spells that we have in this deck, yeah, each opponent is going to be allowing us, very generously of them, to actually cast 2 of their spells. So that's 6 spells in total for 6 mana. Gross. Stolen Goods. Speaking of spells and grossness, target opponent's exiles cards to the top of their library to exile a non-land card. Until end of turn, we can cast the card for free. Yeah, 6 mana, cast 3 cards for free, not limited to sorceries. This can really lead to some massive plays for us. Speaking of massive plays, cast can help us throughout the game with those. During each of your turns, you can cast instant sorcery from your graveyard. And, that's why it gets exiled, but hey, get access to your instant sorceries again. Speaking of again, double vision! Cast, your first instant sorcery each turn, you copy it. So, yeah, again, this helps on our turn, and then also our opponent's turns as well. And then Swarm Intelligence, this helps us all the time. Whenever you cast instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. Again, on top of our commander already copying spells, we get additional copies now, and, oh, that can really, really, really get out of hand. Now, speaking of things getting out of hand, we don't want our opponents to have their things get out of hand, do we? So now let's talk about some ways to throw a wrench into our opponent's plans. Alchemist Retrieval is a great start. Can bounce one of our things, or, again with our commander, 3 of our opponents. Mystic Confluence, very flexible. Can help us counter spells, bounce creatures, or draw cards. And River's Rebuke, the ultimate bounce. Basically, in combination with our commander, this is essentially Cyclonic Rift. That's sorcery speed and for 8 mana, but yeah, basically get rid of all of your opponent's things. Speaking of getting rid of things, terminate, destroy some creatures, feed the swarm, destroy creatures or enchantments, cast swarm, get rid of absolutely anything, and then that opponent might get something random off the top, but you know what? That's a problem for later. Moving on though, how about a Braid? Deal 3 damage to a creature or destroy an artifact. You find some Brizzers, destroy an artifact, or hey, how about some card advantage? Exile the top 3 cards of opponent's library, basically impulse draw them. And then we've got some more flexible cards as well, some charms with Is It Charm and Rakdos Charm. Is It Charm can help counter a non-creature spell, deal some damage to a creature, or loot 2. Rakdos Charm can get rid of a graveyard, destroy an artifact, or again, have every single creature to 1 damage its controller. Again, keep in mind, some of these can actually be, tripled up with our commander, so just keep that in mind again for that added flexibility. And when it comes to actually, throw a wrench to our opponent's plans, we want to be able to protect our own as well. So let's run some counter spells with Negate, counter target non-creature spell, Unwind, counters non-creature spell, untap 3 lands so you get your mana back. And then Swiftfoot Boots, a great piece of equipment, hexproof and haste. What's not to love? And, well, speaking of things that are not to love, well... our opponents probably won't love when we utilize these cards against them, especially in combination with our commander, Hymn to Torok. Target player discards 2 cards at random for just 2 mana. Add 2 more to that again. Every single opponent has to do this, and we are making our opponents discard 6 cards in total, essentially at random. Oh, this can lead to some very, very, very salty players. Speaking of which, Wit's End. Target player discards their hand. Add 2 more mana to that again with our commander. Every single opponent gets rid of their hand. Their hands are gone. Have fun top decking. Speaking of which, Rakdos Return. X damage target opponent. The player discards X cards. You can basically do the exact same thing as Wit's End with some additional damage as well. So yeah, that can be very brutal. But in my opinion, there is one more brutal card, one that stands above the rest, and that is the Golden Pig of this deck, the number 1 card out of our 99. And the number 1 card in the 99, the Golden Pig of this deck is Cruel Ultimatum. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, loses 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, then gain 5 life. Yeah, that is brutal. That can be a ton of value for us and a huge detrimental play to an opponent. But again, with this commander, let's triple it up. Let's make our other opponents do it as well, and we get triple E value out of it again. Get 3 creatures back, draw 9 cards, gain 15 life. Yeah, this can be a massive game-changing play that can be absolutely, again, brutal and fantastic at the same time. And that is why Cruel Ultimatum is the Golden Pig of this deck. Now, that being said, we still have one more brutal play for our opponents, and that is with Exhaustion. Creatures and lands target opponent controls don't tap their next untapped step. Basically, in a way, kind of, target player skips a turn. Basically, take the turn off. You have all your lands tapped or whatnot. Cool, you're not going to be able to utilize them. Your creatures are tapped. Uh-oh, you can't block, with the ones that are tapped. They can't untap and attack again. And also, again, keep in mind, this does target, so we can triple it up with our commanders. So, kind of like, again, a skip turn for all of our opponents. Isn't that lovely? Now, speaking of lovely... next up, we've got some lovely ways to finish off our opponents after, we've demolished their hopes and dreams. Let's start with Gutter Snipe. Whenever you cast instant sorcery, deals 2 damage to each opponent. We're going to be casting a ton of instant sorceries with this deck, so yeah, this can ping them down quite quickly. In a somewhat similar way, Tolerant Sky Summoner. Hey, cast instant sorcery spell, you're going to get a 2/2 flyer, so we can build an army in absolutely no time. Young Pyromancer, lower to the ground, making lower to the ground creatures 1/1 elementals whenever he casts in some sorceries. So yeah, we can fill the board very quickly with a deck like this. We can also fill the board with our opponent's things with something like Invoke the Winds. Gain control of target artifact or creature, untap it. Yeah, again, add 2 extra mana to that with our commander. Hey, let's gain control of 3 things. How about the best 3 creatures our opponents have and just wipe them out with that? Speaking of wiping our opponents out with their creatures, Clone Legion, already a great finisher. Even better with this commander, pay that extra 2 again. Now we target all of our opponents because, again, for each creature target player controls, create a token that have that creature. Basically, copy every single creature of all of your opponent's armies. Good luck to them. Yeah, it's going to be a very fun way to finish out the game. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's talk about the lands. First up, we've got Command Tower, which can tap for any of our colors, so can Crumbling Necropolis and Path of Ancestry, but those do come into play tapped. Moving on, Exotic Orchard can tap for any of our colors most of the time. In the Evolving Wilds Timber Expanse, we can sacrifice and go get a basic into play tapped. Speaking of which, essentially very similarly, we've got Riveteer's Overlook, Maestro's Theater, and Obscura Storefront, each which can go get one of our basics into play tapped when they come to play. They're sacrificed, and we also gain 1 life. Then there's Ash Barrens, which we can basically land cycle away for 1. Mirror Landscape, which can actually help ramp us by getting us 2 lands that share a land type. Moving forward, we've got some bounce lands with Dimir Aqueduct, Rakdos Carnarium, Is It Boilerworks? These can be huge in helping us, ensure that we are hitting our land drops. And then finally, we are going to be rounding out our deck with basics, islands, swamps, and mountains. But now that we've talked about every single card in this deck, including the lands, let's talk about the price. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, every single card in this deck is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck with an estimated cost of $26.01. And keep in mind, for some potential extra savings, you might be able to save even more by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Though do keep in mind this estimated cost does not include the cost of basic lands or the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. So yeah, again, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you enjoyed the deck tech. And yeah, if you are, interested in the deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.